Welcome to Trashmagination, a podcast about reimagining trash. I'm Carla Brown. Today we're going to talk about the creative reuse of tennis balls and rackets. This episode is inspired by my friend Marna. More than 2 years ago, we met for tacos, and she brought 2 big bags of used tennis balls. She had rescued them from a nearby school when she saw that they were being thrown away. And right now, Wimbledon is happening, so I figured you might be thinking about tennis. You might not think tennis balls are a big creative reuse problem, but each year, 325 million tennis balls are produced in the world. One tournament results in thousands of balls heading to the trash. For example, Wimbledon produces 36,000 tennis balls each year. At Wimbledon, a wildlife group has been upcycling tennis balls. They have been making homes for the Eurasian harvest mouse. It's a very tiny mouse. The adults weigh only 6 grams. The Wildlife Trust drills a hole in each ball and attaches them to a pole that is about 1 meter or 3 feet off the ground. This provides habitat away from where humans will disturb them. That is the cutest tennis ball creative reuse option that I encountered while preparing for this episode, but it's only the beginning. Before we start drilling into tennis balls or cutting them up, let's start by talking about how you could get more bounces from your existing tennis balls. We know tennis balls are made from rubber covered in a wool or nylon shell. Inside is pressurized air. Most tennis balls get tossed away into the trash because the air inside has become depressurized. However, the rubber and outer shell are often still in great condition. One way to creatively reuse tennis balls is to repressurize them. There is a company called Rebounces, which makes a machine that helps you repressurize tennis balls. This is a great option for tennis organizations who want to reduce their trash and who produce enough dead tennis balls to make the investment worthwhile. The tennis balls that my friend Marna gave me seemed fine to my non-tennis expert standards. My family has been playing with them for 2 years at our local courts. Just like at Wimbledon, where they generate thousands of barely used balls, I think this might happen a lot, where tennis balls are used in a tournament and then get tossed. So if you run a tennis tournament or tennis organization, I hope you will consider looking into rebounces. And if that doesn't work for you, you could at least give your less than perfect tennis balls to somebody who doesn't have such high standards, and so the balls will get played with until they truly lose their bounce. At some point, the outer shell will need to be recycled, and since tennis balls are made from 2 very different materials, it is difficult to recycle them, and that's because recycling programs are not usually good at separating materials. There are a few places where you can send your dead tennis balls. A youth-led organization in the United States is called Recycle Balls, and it's sponsored by Wilson Sporting Goods. It was started in Vermont in 2016. It has collected more than 20 million tennis balls in that time, and it has 120,000 collection stations around the United States. The program provides prepaid shipping, so it's free to mail them your used tennis balls. They make something called green gold, which is crumb rubber, and that can be incorporated into other products. Sometimes it's used to make tennis courts, and 1 court can be made with 10,000 tennis balls. In the United Kingdom, there is an organization called Recycle Tennis Balls, which collects balls to donate to dog charities as play toys. So those are the options if you want to send your tennis balls for recycling. Next, we'll talk about creative reuse ideas that you can do right in your own community. I sorted the ideas into 4 categories: physical training and therapy, games, crafts, and furniture. Let's start by talking about a bunch of ways that you can use tennis balls to help with physical training or physical therapy. To start, let me introduce you to someone named Mr. Mouth. Mr. Mouth is made by cutting a slit in a tennis ball and adding googly eyes. When you squeeze Mr. Mouth, his mouth opens up, and when you stop squeezing, his mouth closes tightly to hold objects. Mr. Mouth can be installed in your home to hold your keys, your mail, your scissors, or a dish towel. Mr. Mouth looks a lot like a yellow emoji face, so you could add a red tongue or heart eyes to make a fun craft. Some physical therapists and teachers make Mr. Mouth tennis balls to help students practice their fine motor skills. For example, students might roll some dice and feed Mr. Mouth that many beads. Tennis balls can be a great tool for professionals working with those with sensory challenges. A speech-language pathologist named Amy Mapplethorpe made a tennis ball chair. She cut tennis balls in half and attached them to a chair, to both the seat and the backrest. This made a bumpy chair. Amy found this helped students to be more patient and better at following directions. To make the chair, she covered it with fabric and hot glued tennis ball halves to the fabric. Occupational therapists use tennis balls to help people grip slim objects. For example, you can put a paintbrush through the center of a tennis ball. This helps people to hold the tennis ball who might have challenges gripping such a small stick. For example, it might allow someone who has arthritis to get back into painting. Some teachers put tennis balls on chairs or table legs in their classrooms to reduce the scraping sound when students move furniture. I'll share a video in the show notes showing how to prepare tennis balls for classrooms using a safe technique. It uses something called a Forstner bit on a drill press. This teacher built a small square wooden jig to hold the tennis ball so it wouldn't roll while he was drilling it. Tennis balls can be a handy tool for swimmers training to improve their breaststroke. The swimmer presses a tennis ball between his or her chin and chest while swimming. They also can hold tennis balls in their hands to get their hands in the best position. I'll link to a training video that shows someone training in this way. Now, here's a more unusual type of physical training. There is a type of performance art that originated in New Zealand called poi, or P-O-I. It was originally designed to help Maori warriors build their wrist strength. Today, it involves rhythmically swinging a ball on the end of a short rope, and it is usually performed by women in a group with everybody synchronized. When you are learning how to do it, a great option is to make a simple poi from a tennis ball and a rope. I will link to a tutorial video in the show notes made by the Polynesian Cultural Center in Hawaii. You probably have heard the tip about using a tennis ball for self-massage when you have a sore back. You put the tennis ball on the floor and you lay on top of it. You push the tennis ball into the exact spot where you are feeling pain and it provides a pressure point. Now, I find tennis balls are sometimes not hard enough for my back pain, and I tend to use a hockey or lacrosse ball instead. But if you are more sensitive, a tennis ball might work better. Attaching a series of tennis balls along a rope helps you to make a great upcycled foam roller. I'll link to a site that suggests 9 great stretches that you can do with a tennis ball. Some Pilates trainers use tennis balls cut in half as part of their routine. They might step on a half tennis ball as a foot massage, or they might put it under their hands when they are doing exercises when their hands are on the floor, for example, like a push-up, because it provides a cushion to the wrist. Since the ball is cut in half, it doesn't roll away. Now let's talk about simple toys and games that you can make with upcycled tennis balls. For many years, my son's Cub Scout troop had a carnival with game stations, and my family always hosted a station called Bottoms Up. We put aluminum cans on 3 different platforms, such as an upside-down trash can or a piece of wood. And then we put a tennis ball inside a long sock or pantyhose leg, and we attached it to the back of the Cub Scout. The Scout would then try to knock over the cans using only the tennis ball. We would time how long it took them to knock over the 3 cans. This game always makes people laugh, and it's fun to do whether you are a little kid or any age at all. We have also seen this game done where the pantyhose was attached to the person's head, and you had to swing your head to knock down the cans. Another game that I would like to make with upcycled tennis balls is called ladder golf. Making the ladder would be a great woodworking project for a beginning woodworker, and you could use scrap wood. So you attach 2 tennis balls with a string to make something like a bolo. You stand some distance away from the ladder and you throw the bolo, and they wrap around the rungs of the ladder. The goal is to wrap the bolo around different rungs, and each rung is assigned a different number of points. And you play until someone collects enough points. Tennis balls are, of course, a great way to play with dogs. And I did read that it's safer to give your dog only 1 ball at a time because some dogs, like golden retrievers, might try to put them all in their mouth at one time, which can cause choking. Now, some people make tug toys for their dogs by drilling a hole in the tennis ball and then attaching a climbing rope or other strong rope. You could creatively reuse a t-shirt by cutting it into strips, braiding it into a very strong rope, and then attaching it through your tennis ball. I have mentioned the creative upcycler Danny Co. in many Trashmagination podcast episodes before. And of course, he has an idea for tennis balls. In his 2011 book called Upcycling, he has a project where he drills holes in a bunch of tennis balls and then he puts them on a really long rope. He then hangs the rope up in his backyard in a big loop to make a cushy swing. So now let's talk about ways to creatively reuse tennis balls into crafts. I recommend you check out an Etsy shop. It's called Asher Jasper, and she specializes in making crafts from needle felted tennis balls. I have only done a little bit of needle felting, but it's really fun, and I never would have thought of using a tennis ball as the base shape, but it makes total sense because the tennis ball shell is kind of fluffy and it would give a really good base for this project. She makes adorable monsters and other creatures by sculpting wool around tennis balls. Manny Cordestani is an artist who lives close to me in Northern Virginia. He makes change purses and phone cases and other things from upcycled tennis balls. So if you think about a tennis ball, if you take it apart, it is made from 2 kind of long oval pieces with some curves, and he manipulates those shapes to make his products, and they look fantastic. A popular craft for craft sales is to make bath bombs. This is a good beginner craft for young people. Bath bombs are fizzy balls that you put in your bath that they make a lot of bubbles and they release relaxing scents. So if you cut a tennis ball in half, it makes just the right sized mold to make bath bombs. So you don't have to go buy a mold to do this craft. There are many other crafts on my Pinterest board that mostly would be exciting to someone who is a huge tennis fan, like a tennis ball wreath or a garland or holiday ornament. So if you love someone who loves tennis, I recommend that you head over to the Trashmagination Pinterest board for tennis balls and you will get lots of ideas. This could be great if you're hosting an end of the year party for your tennis club too. Every so often, people email me photos of furniture made from tennis balls, and I agree, they look super comfy. One designer who made a chair from tennis balls is Garth Britzman. He called his chair the Tennis Lounge. This is one of those creative reuse projects that makes me want to learn how to be a great welder because the balls are connected together on long metal tubes that are welded into a very cool chair shape. Hugh Hayden used to make dog beds from tennis balls in a hexagon shape. William Holman has an Instructables tutorial online that shows how he made a wooden chair padded with tennis balls. Unlike the story I talked about earlier where the speech language pathologist glued tennis ball halves to the chair, he doesn't use that technique, but instead he cut holes in wood that were the right size for the tennis balls. He cut 50 holes and then he took these old vinyl panels off an old metal chair and he replaced them with the wood that were embedded with tennis balls and it looks quite comfy. Tejo Remy and René Veenhuizen made 6 benches from tennis balls for a museum in the Netherlands. They look like long tubes with branches sticking out. In some photos, you can see inside the tubes, and I can see that there's an armature that looks like a series of metal circles. So those are all my ideas for tennis balls. The next thing I want to mention just quickly are tennis ball canisters. And those are those long, tall, skinny plastic containers that hold tennis balls. Of course, we want to upcycle those too. Now, I found a tutorial for how to make a bird feeder from a tennis ball canister. And I also noticed they are the perfect size to hold cupcake liners if you like to bake with those. And some people, I noticed, put them in the water bottle holder on their bike because then they could use it to store items. So next, I'll share creative reuse ideas for tennis rackets. These ideas would apply to any kind of racket, of course, such as badminton, racquetball, or squash. And most of these ideas involve older, vintage-looking rackets made from wood. So quite a few fiber artists do needlework on old rackets. It might sound a bit surprising at first, but when you think about it, the oval wooden rackets look similar to an embroidery hoop, and they already have this nice gridded work surface for cross-stitching or other needlework stitches. I will link to tutorials by Sadie Seasongoods and the blog The Gathered Home in the show notes if you would like to give this craft a try. The South African artist Daniel Clef has sewn a whole series of racket embroideries that are very inspiring. She takes a photograph and first she paints an ink portrait, and then she stitches the same image on the surface of the racket with thick, colorful thread. I'll link to an interview with Danielle in the show notes so you can see how she does it. Next, if you love woodworking, there are a bunch of ways to creatively reuse tennis rackets to make tables, baskets, or shelves. I even saw a fence or trellis made from recycled tennis rackets, and not only the wooden kind, they just painted the whole thing white once they were done. The blog Crafting a Green World shows how to make a butterfly net from a tennis racket, and I saw an Instagram post where someone made a fishing net. The blog Garden Therapy shares an idea about beaded tennis rackets. This involves removing the strings from a wooden racket, and then you string colorful beads in that empty oval space in whatever design makes you happy. It looks nice if you use translucent beads and the sun shines through them in your garden. In each of my podcast episodes, I like to share lots of practical creative reuse ideas with you, and I also like to share a few examples of artists who have done installation pieces with the same material. The most impressive tennis ball art installation I've seen was made by Ana Soler Baena. She did an installation with 2,000 tennis balls in 2012. The piece was called Causa Effecto, which means cause and effect. She hung the balls all around inside the Mustang Art Museum. The balls look like they are frozen mid-bounce. The photos from this exhibit are so fun because you really can't see the strings hanging those balls from the ceiling. I'll share a video showing how she sewed a string onto every single one of those 2,000 tennis balls as part of the installation process. In terms of tennis racket art installations, there is this huge installation made from tennis rackets at the Washington Convention Center, not far from where I live. I have seen it many times. It is by Donald Lipsky, and it is one of 5 sculptural pieces that he made there. The other sculptures feature guitars, bar stools, kayaks, and bicycles. Thank you for listening. This was my 80th podcast episode. Please let me know about anything that you have made from tennis balls and rackets or tennis ball canisters. And you can reach me at trashmagination@gmail.com. Until next time, may you see tennis balls and rackets as a source of art in your life.